On a morning in early 2026, the atmosphere in London's diplomatic corridors seemed to thicken with a sharp message. Not baseless rumors, but an affirmation of boundaries. The dignity of the crown is not a commodity to be traded. Perhaps we are witnessing the most rigorous re-establishment of order in modern history, where every symbol of power must be placed in its proper position. According to several sources within the palace circles, a comprehensive dossier was compiled under the supervision of two figures embodying discipline, one a devoted steward of tradition, and the other a future successor. The subject of this review was an entity known as the distant arrow Archewell, where inexplicable loopholes exist. The hypothesis is, how can an organization facing a severe financial downturn, according to publicly available financial reports, a decline of allegedly $11 million, still organize ceremonial trips to countries like Nigeria or Colombia? Data from U.S. regulatory agencies raises questions about inconsistencies in financial compliance. While meager renewal fees of a few $100s were overlooked, preferential diplomatic privileges, from special visas to military escorts, were extensively utilized. The question arises, is this independent philanthropy, or is it a case of borrowing the spotlight to pursue private agendas? Meanwhile, the contrast is more stark than ever when considering the Welsh successor. Foreign press outlets have questioned the differences in his governing style. H. On one side is the commitment of dozens of actual working days for each project. On the other is the controversial figure an average of 60 minutes per week for a philanthropic empire. In conclusion, the question for the timeline is, the crown cannot float on private trips. This statement seems to be directed not just at an individual, but a message to the future about the integrity of institutions. As clarification letters are drafted and titles face the risk of being frozen in commercial activity, we realize a conflict of life philosophies, quiet discipline or ostentatious display. The truth probably still lies in the secret archives in London and California. And what do you see behind these plummeting financial figures and ceremonial trips? Is this an attempt to protect heritage or a ruthless purge by the system? In the world of symbols, the difference sometimes lies not in words, but in how a person presents themselves. Legend in London recounts that the image of a royal woman silently standing in the rain all afternoon to fulfill her duties became the benchmark for the concept of service. It creates a stark contrast to modern branding thinking. It seems that in the corridors of Buckingham Palace, a philosophical question is being posed. Does the value of a title lie in quiet sacrifice or in the ability to self-promote in flamboyant photographs? According to internal sources, what is unfolding is not a noisy legal prosecution, but rather the re-establishment of a blurred border. Royal investigators, in collaboration with transatlantic regulators, are tracing an undeniable lead, a financial trail. J. The hypothesis put forward by insiders is an entity cannot survive indefinitely under the shadow of a crown if it is rotting from within. The astonishing decline. From a peak of $13 million in 2021, the donation flow appears to have bottomed out, falling below $500,000 in 2022. The silent freeze. Quiet staff cuts and the absence of substantive projects in 2024 paint a picture of instability. There is a strange contradiction that observers are questioning. How could an organization aiming for global influence forget a $200 renewal fee in California? For the palace, this wasn't just a technical misstep, it was a breakpoint in credibility. If an organization can't manage the smallest numbers, are they qualified to operate the vast diplomatic privileges? For the past 6 years, the palace has chosen to whisper about its differences. But on January 29th, perhaps they chose a different approach document and publicize. The message is clear. You can run a business, you can tour, but you can't use the halo of the crown to fuel your personal machine. In the world of ceremonies, contradictions are considered unacceptable. Two realities seem to exist simultaneously. On one side, the glitzy scenes of visits to orphanages and handshakes with national leaders under the guise of humanitarianism. And on the other, the stark numbers on paper alarming a lack of transparency. Observers question, is it fair for an organization struggling with legal issues to continue using royal protocol as a passport to project an image of power? Legends about royal discipline often mention a woman willing to sleep in dilapidated shipping containers in disaster-stricken areas just to avoid attention. For her, humanitarianism was a sacrifice, not a performance. According to some sources from closed-door meetings, a powerful statement was uttered, shaking the palace corridors. Humanitarianism is not an outfit you put on when you go abroad. It is a ledger that you must balance publicly and honestly. Kai. This is not just a reprimand, but a declaration of integrity. Perhaps the palace wants to assert that public support doesn't come from beautiful photos, but from transparency in every penny donated. For years, the palace's silence was seen as an act of tolerance for private lives. But as legal obstacles and delays in response from Archewell increased, that tolerance reached its limit. The hypothesis widely accepted by analysts is that the palace no longer views this as a personal branding issue. It has transformed into a rigorous internal compliance investigation. When an organization comes under scrutiny by U.S. regulators, being in the shadow of the crown is no longer a privilege, but a risk to its millennia-old heritage. Enough. A short word, yet one that carries the weight of an entire institution. The agreement between the Crown Prince and his aunt has put an end to an era of harmless misunderstandings. The question facing us now is, can a humanitarian organization sustain itself without core discipline and transparency? And when the velvet curtain of diplomatic priorities is lifted, what will remain behind the glamorous trips? Let's wait for further developments from the legal documents that are about to be released. Although no legal ruling has been issued yet in the world of heritage, reputational damage is sometimes more devastating than a court verdict. R. The young crown prince seems to have realized a harsh truth. Public trust is a finite asset. According to a senior advisor, the issue isn't just about numbers, but about transparency in fundraising. A troubling question arises if donors believe they are contributing to a royal value. But this is not actually the case. Are we facing a scenario of misrepresentation? While internal investigations are intensifying, another front has emerged: the forum of public opinion. On the opposite side, a subtle campaign was launched. It was a masterful blend of imagery of vulnerability and pronouncements of heritage. Insiders suggest this was an attempt to blur the lines between individual ego and the millennia-old dynasty. The use of lofty titles or stylized crown imagery under the international spotlight raises questions about a deliberate confusion. At an event in Nigeria, when sponsors described themselves using the global titles of the House of Windsor, a serious disconnect from reality began to emerge. Princess Anne, with her keen insight, outlined a chilling definition. There are accidental misunderstandings, and there are orchestrated misunderstandings. A special audit of language revealed astonishing figures. Over 60% of the entity's media materials used language that misled the public into believing in official palace approval. Technically, it might not have violated the law, but in the world of honor, it broke something far more important: trust. The palace drew its final line with a weighty silence. Now, the initiative lies with those who stand outside the barriers of tradition. Can a brand survive by borrowing the glory of the past, or must it stand firmly on its own transparent feet? And in the clash between silent duty and image campaigns, whose name will history choose to remember? The answer remains open. And do you side with strict discipline, or the freedom to shape your brand, share your perspective, so we can decipher the next chapters of this play of thrones? Behind closed doors, royal staff began to notice a new concept emerging: a parallel monarchy. According to a confidential internal memo, concerns were mounting on long-delayed audio and visual projects. Were behind-the-scenes footage from Windsor or memories from Frogmore Cottage being re-edited to serve a deeply personal agenda? As hashtags for a modern monarchy proliferated on social media, one wondered, can a heritage be celebrated when its core principles are disregarded? According to reports from informed sources, the first cracks appeared within the operational team itself. Several former employees operating in anonymity described a tense environment with vague instructions. We were asked to create projects of royal stature, but there were no clear boundaries to follow. This ambiguity appeared to be a carefully calculated tactic. The arrangement of diplomatic ceremonies, such as military escorts or flag displays in partner countries, which didn't fully understand the couple's changing status, created a perfect gray area. Their prestige was maintained without the need for any formal representation. Princess Anne, with her usual ironclad stance, is said to have made a sharp remark: "One cannot honor an institution while actively rejecting its rules. That is marketing, not memory." For the palace, this systematic confusion had reached the limit of its tolerance. Perhaps this is why the Prince of Wales began considering a more drastic solution, establishing legal boundaries for titles. Completely stripping the title is a sensitive issue, but limiting its use in fundraising campaigns is a possibility being seriously considered. A disclaimer might be the next step to protect the integrity of the crown. What do you think of this gray area tactic? Is this a clever adaptation in the digital age? In the discreet discussions at the palace, the ultimate goal established is not confrontation, but protection. A powerful viewpoint was shared. The system has rules because it carries responsibility. If those rules become optional, then the value of the institution will disappear. This steadfastness seems to stem not only from disciplined individuals like Princess Anne, but also from the quiet yet resolute support of the Princess of Wales. For them, this is a battle to protect public trust, the most valuable asset that no marketing campaign can buy. According to reputable media outlets, the atmosphere in Britain is shifting from curiosity to a state of profound weariness. Commentators are beginning to question a paradox. How can one consistently criticize the system while simultaneously exploiting its closeness? A sharp remark in the Times has become a focal point of attention. You cannot both deny the crown and wear its jewels in the same sentence. The public is not blind, and damage to trust is cumulative. Instead of being caught up in noisy controversies, Buckingham Palace seems to have chosen a different path, the presence of quiet action. A series of short documentary clips have been released not for ostentation, but to remind us of enduring dedication, Princess Anne. With her decades-long journey with Save the Children, Princess Catherine with her profound contributions to the development of future generations, Prince Edward with his unwavering connections across the Commonwealth. The message behind these films is clear. True legacy is built over time, and with commitment not on flashy headlines. The final hypothesis we need to consider: when the media frenzy dies down, what remains brilliant yet fragile personal brands good? Is it an institution that stands firm thanks to discipline and self-respect? Quiet service, though unassuming, always seems to find a way to be recognized. According to opinion polls from late 2025, a strong wave of confidence has swept over those who keep the flame of tradition burning. Support for Princess Anne and Princess Catherine reached record highs of 74% and 82%, respectively. Conversely, confidence in the Sussex couple has reportedly plummeted in both the UK and Canada. What began as questions about their financial records has now officially become a global reputational cleansing. The real turning point came on the morning of January 19, 2026. In an almost unprecedented event, the royal keeper of discipline, Princess Anne, appeared before the press. Not to attend a ceremony, but to announce a truth. Her presence alongside legal experts and the ethics committee was proof that silence had reached its limit. With a calm yet powerful demeanor, Princess Anne offered a sharp definition of the institution's existence. The crown's duty is to serve, not to impose, to protect, not to exploit. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as she announced the conclusions of her comprehensive investigation into the Archewell entity. No longer vague theories, the report revealed a shocking truth. There was significant overlap between funds raised in the name of the royal family and their use for purposes completely unrelated to the public good. Cameras flashed, files were opened, and a new line was drawn. This is not just a family story, but a lesson in integrity in the age of digital media. What do you think of this decisive action by the palace? Is this a necessary step to salvage public trust? Or will it usher in a new turbulent chapter in the relationship between members of the royal family? Let's pause here before we delve into the transatlantic legal rifts. Looking at this contrast, what kind of person do you think the character we are analyzing is? Please leave. Comment number 2. If you see this as an image of freedom and the effort to change old values, or leave a comment. Comment number 5. If you feel this is just a personal branding strategy lacking consistency, your feedback is a piece of the puzzle that helps us complete this overall picture. And don't forget to click like, also subscribe to the channel. Watch now to avoid missing the next shocking developments in our series on deciphering the throne. Princess Anne's words resonated not only within the historic chambers of St. James's Palace, but also created a global psychological earthquake. It seems This is no longer a story about dry accounting numbers, but a direct indictment of value erosion. Inconsistencies are brought to light: anonymous donations, private flights disguised as charitable initiatives, and a dangerously blurred line between non-profit organizations and commercial production machinery. Although no names were explicitly mentioned, the message was as clear as a decree. All instances of using the royal name for personal gain must cease immediately. Less than 24 hours later, from across the ocean, a stark contrast emerged. Amidst the sun-drenched, leafy landscape of California, an online discussion became the stage for a subtly veiled response. Analysts have observed that a subtle shift in style. There are no financial explanations, no mention of the trip to Nigeria, or any prestigious titles. Instead, it's a familiar scenario of women rising above outdated structures. Maybe putting oneself in the victim's position is a last-ditch effort to protect a brand already shaky in the face of irrefutable evidence. The silence regarding specific figures from California. Seemingly, this statement carried more weight than any rebuttal. In Commonwealth countries, from Canada to New Zealand, a new sense of caution was established. In particular, the statement from Nigerian officials encapsulated the general sentiment of international public opinion: "We welcome cooperation in good faith." But if that goodwill is turned into a marketing tool, we need a satisfactory answer. As questions began to swirl about, who is the real spokesperson for the monarchy, Princess Anne concluded her speech with quiet pride. It seems the world has recognized the difference between those who serve with the lens and those who serve with real hands. The 67% public support for the palace's rigidity is irrefutable proof. H. This is no longer a step backward, but a deliberate reform. On January 22, 2026, a historic document was born, Charter of Transparency, under the leadership of Prince William. This charter acts as a tight net, sealing off areas that insiders believe have long been exploited. Every visit requires written authorization. There is no room for superficiality or unclear status. All funds raised in the name of the monarchy must undergo an independent audit every 2 years in the UK. Any media project involving royalty must publicly disclose its profit model. Service cannot be used as a sales slogan. Service is not a slogan, it's a standard. William's assertion set a final limit for anyone wishing to act on behalf of the family. The reaction was almost immediate. Within just 14 days of the request for financial clarification being sent, a legal battle erupted. According to sources, a legal team from California has filed a preemptive lawsuit accusing the palace of interfering with charitable activities and damaging its reputation. At the same time, on the stage of the Women's Summit, a familiar figure appeared. Dressed in a calm, neutral outfit, sharp words were delivered. The hypothesis is this an attempt to protect individual freedoms or a tactic to create chaos in the face of London's demands for transparency? In California, amidst applause from supporters, a deeply humane message was delivered: the world needs compassion, not control. It seems this was an attempt to shift public attention from dry audit figures to issues of identity and emotion. By focusing on systemic barriers for women of color, the speech skillfully created a veil over the key questions. Observers note that throughout the conversation there was no explanation of the Archewell entity's financial records, nor any mention of privileges in Nigeria. Silence in the face of irrefutable evidence. The question is It is essentially a defensive tactic using words. T. Recently, international forums have been buzzing with theories regarding a tactical shift from the California side. Instead of directly addressing questions about cash flow or the reports from Nigeria, we are seeing the emergence of a new concept: compassion versus control. Unverified sources suggest that the focus on emotional language and the narrative of a woman of color taking on the institution is an effort to shift the focus from material evidence to personal identity. Is this the voice of freedom or a scripted fantasy staged to obscure the gaps in financial reports? Let's analyze the following theories. Why is public opinion so sharply divided? While traditional Western media outlets praise an icon of poise, British newspapers like The Telegraph and Daily Mail raise chilling questions. Where is the line between a royal brand and an operation spiraling out of control? The secret lies in these things. Don't say it out loud. The palace's silence regarding the investigation and accounts related to the Archewell entity is becoming a difficult puzzle for those in the know. Is there a secret behind Princess Catherine's quiet appearances at grassroots charities? If the other side's strategy was explosive speeches, then Catherine and William seem to be sending a message through presence. Commentators have noted a shift. No cameras, no press releases, just consistent service. One theory is that the palace is deliberately building a completely opposite image. Fewer extravagant trips, a greater focus on local life, as a way to affirm the standard of genuine service. Returning to developments in Nigeria, a statement from the country's foreign ministry caused a minor upheaval. There appears to have been a misunderstanding regarding legal status during the visit in May 2025. There are reports suggesting that a private organization facilitated this trip without coordination through official diplomatic channels. H. If this is true, then the royal title was used as a marketing tool rather than a diplomatic mission. This is a challenging assumption for anyone who believes in the rigor of international standards. When the records were reviewed, a shameful reality emerged. Seemingly, the truth has been revealed. An educational institution in Africa has issued a shocking statement claiming they were misled into believing in a non-existent royal connection. Is there a secret behind Fortune 500 corporations immediately freezing millions of dollars in committed funds? There are unverified sources claiming that this is not just a media mishap, but a break point in reputation that no marketing campaign can salvage. Let's analyze the hypothesis of those fateful 14 days. When the deadline passed in silence with no audit, no apology, public opinion began to ask, is this silence a dignified choice or a deadlock in the face of irrefutable evidence? Instead of arguing, the palace responded with an action that spoke louder than 1,000 words. Silent erasure, a short update on the official website. Seemingly, this marked the end of a global brand. Harry and Meghan now face a new reality, one where the protection of the royal gray zone has completely vanished. This is not just a matter of ethics, but a matter of heritage. As one historian observed, we are witnessing William and Anne recreating an institution right in the midst of modern-day scandals. J. When the last remaining ties are broken, even the most glamorous film projects can be ruined. Seemingly, it fell into a state of legal freeze. Meanwhile, look at the symbolic contrast. A woman without a crown, without designer clothes, wearing only an old silver pendant, silently holding the hands of children battling illness. The hypothesis is, are the public seeking the glamour of the stars or the genuine presence of compassion? The space between privilege and independence that the Sussex couple once embraced has now officially ceased to exist. According to opinion polls, an astonishing consensus of 87% has been established. The final act is not a noisy trial, but a quiet erasure from the timeline of history. That silence speaks volumes more than any scandal. This is just a fictional scenario based on controversial events, but it offers a profound lesson. Power may come from titles, but a legacy is built only through transparency and service. This information is for reference only based on unverified hypotheses and rumors/public opinions. Let's discuss this issue from an objective analytical perspective. The ultimate truth may still remain behind closed doors. And you, which side are you on in this symbolic battle? Press 1 if you believe in the rise of new norms, or 0 if you remain skeptical about these changes. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue to unravel the mysteries. F.